ladies and gentlemen, I present to you America's top foundational health coach, Dr. Joe D.
Hey there, I'm Dr. Jody Baer, known as America's top foundational health coach, empowering individuals for over 4 decades. Foundations of health, foundations of living, foundations of hope in all 6 pillars of human existence, starting with spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, social, and financial. Being a holistic nutritionist, not half-listic, we go into the core. My clients have achieved over 1 million pounds of toxic fat loss in my practice here, and tens and hundreds of people and thousands with this man who is my esteemed guest here tonight on our show, or today if you're watching it, or tomorrow morning if you're watching it then, will have said in this COVID era that they've been able to remediate, regain, and then reclaim their health. What I'm doing right now, at being 68 and 7/8 years young, I can say that I'm empowering the next generation through social media, having this laptop lifestyle that we do so that they can know these tools, these amazing life-giving principles. And you're going to hear them from my esteemed guest today. My key to success is this: it's systemized, it's easy, and then it's sustainable, because health is not something you do, it's what you become along life's journey. So let's become this on life's milkshake moment. Life is like a milkshake. Choose your ingredients wisely, and when you do, your life will be oh so sweet. This small town ponytail girl from Montana, that brown-eyed, brown-haired girl, found health coaching, found her health coaching magic when I found out that I was expecting my unborn son, my first son. That's when I began. Found hope when my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic and liver cancer. I was then in my mid-20s, had just started on my journey, and I found life-sustaining principles, some of which you will hear about today. And it gave her length of life way beyond her 6 weeks to live diagnosis. Why did I sing with Alicia Williamson on that recording and doing the background vocals, winning a Dove Award and a Grammy? There is hope. My mother said to me as she was departing and transcending from this world to the next, she said, Jody, just give others hope the way you've given it to me. What you're going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, today is hope. Hope unfounded. You're going to hear how it's really, really easy, simple, and sustainable. Easy to do, easy not to do. What I love most about this is that when people in my practice, they come to me on their knees and say, Jody, help me. They get their health breakthrough and they say, Jody, look at me. That is just this part that I've been able to be with my guest, Dr. Jim Marinakis, today. And I've been with him a number of years, going on a decade. He has done this for 50 years in practice, and it's just commonplace. I get excited about things. He'll tell me as he's training me as being one of his students, he says, of course it will help, because no food tastes as good as health feels. He is vibrant. You would think that he's middle-aged, but his soul and his chronology say that he's middle-aged. He's got a lot more to do, as I do as well. He embodies my quote that I had in my second book, Ignite the Wisdom. When you take care of you and your world first, the world around you is empowered forever. So without any ado, after our commercial break, I am going to bring up Dr. Jim Marinakis. Make sure that you know about my books, The third one, the solo book, the 21 Days to Your Best You, Keys for a Life of Excellence, is coming out mid-March, end of February, working on that date with the publishers. But frankly, I'm not having juice here. Hold on a minute. That's why we do live TV. Isn't that interesting? My computer decided it was running low, but we're running high. So we're good. We're good. We're good. This is what I'll say, is that these books, Keys to the Life of Excellence, one of them is Adapt and Overcome. We move, we do these things. So make sure we're going to our commercial break with businessfromhome.net, that you go ahead, take a chance, take a look, take a listen, and make sure, as we're doing this, that you can order my limited edition books on my website, autographed by me, limited edition with this. And also you can pre-order if you decide, or get on the notification when 21 Days to Your Best You comes out. What our commercial break is today is my absolute wonderful friend and colleague, Peter Mingles. In this economy, don't we need a better way to look at things? That side hustle. He has many. Businessfromhome.net. Peter and I have done a radio show, Building Fortunes Radio, for almost a decade. And Humongous Classified, you can advertise your business in so many digital platforms for absolutely next to nothing to make your bottom line much higher and take care of the bottoms that you have in your household. Let's get a listen to and a look for Peter Mingles with businessfromhome.net.
Inflation is going through the roof. Food prices, gas prices, housing prices, insurance, everything. The average family is feeling the pinch. So what can you do? Ask your boss for a 20% cost of living wage increase? That won't end well. Fall for a get-rich-quick scheme? There are people who you can rely on to show you how to make money in a home-based business. Give us a chance to walk you through how it works. It's not really that complicated. You just have to find the right opportunity and the right people. Visit www.humongous.com/TV and submit your information. Maybe we can help. Billions of families are wondering how to work from home and earn extra income.
And Peter has a plan. So reach out to him. He's a friend of my colleague of mine, and you can catch us on buildingfortunesradio.com/live every single Sunday, 8:30 Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And this is the way that you can participate. Just like NPR, just like public radio and public TV, anything broadcasting, if you're enjoying our Healthopedia channel, if you're enjoying Traverse TV, if you're enjoying what we do to just be a part of La Casa Sobre de Ropa in Colombia and orphans, knowing that a major portion of your contribution goes to our orphans down in Colombia, and a major portion then goes to the network, so that we can keep bringing you these amazing speakers, these amazing platforms, and this amazing education. And speaking of amazing, this is the man. He has a plan for health. He has a plan unlike anyone else that I would ever see. And it's always, as I would say, you are away 3 degrees from separation from someone that will change your life. That's the way it works. It used to be 6. Now it's truly 3 degrees because of the internet. I went to a personal development training with my coach at that time, who I was just beginning to coach with Jay Noland. I went away to a conference. I left there feeling like I could do anything in all 6 pillars of human existence. Got a call from a colleague of mine. You know how it goes. Friend of a friend. He said, I think you need to meet this man. I think he would really click. Boy, was he right. I will always want to just give homage and honor to Timothy for introducing us. Now, normally I would have gotten on the phone, had a chat, and we would collaborate. No, no, no. After this training, and it was called RED, you learned how you could break through walls. There's a reason I'm saying this, ladies and gentlemen. You could break through walls and do anything. I drove from northwest of Orlando, where I live, to Boca Raton, where he lives. I thought I must meet him. And that was undoubtedly one of the top 3 best decisions of my life, is meeting the man. I knew that he was a servant from the very beginning. He gave me this nutritional supplement that just tasted like candy, actually. And he said, you need this, it will give you a better experience, because I was frazzled. We were going through a tropical storm. I was going through hurricane to be maybe Emily, and he just calmed me down. That's what he does. He has a calm, he has a soulfulness about him, because he truly, truly is a healer. Only 1 of 5 people in the world, did I say the world, does what he does. People come to train with him because he is a healer. He was an athlete in high school. He found, as we always do, and you'll hear this in a minute, how he found this modality of the body being able to put in the right condition to heal itself. Then as a practitioner that was just by once of those 3 degrees of separation, he found a man who changed his trajectory of his life, a true healer. 35,000 patients that he has seen and treated, he did, and he had seen in California in 10 years. No advertising, no nothing. Why? Because people came to see him. They came because they knew they got results. Being on the board, being a part of the physicians, not only as a naturopathic healer, as an acupuncture physician, being on the board in California of the acupuncture physicians board to actually certify people, being an Olympic doctor and trainer of the Olympic team in Sarajevo in 1984, being a man who absolutely was part of a consortium that we're doing internationally with the board of practitioners, along with Dr. Carol Magda, that will soon be reclaimed and regained post-COVID. The awards go on and on and on. But what he does with that soulful healing, just like he gave me that, gee, I think you might need something this. Being a homeopath, being a naturopath, being someone now, for I think 35 years, he is now relocated, then with his wife and young children. Now the children are grown, but for the last 35 years has trained the trainer. No longer seeing patients. He wants to do what I said at my pitch at the very beginning, my introduction, that I want to embody the next generation of healers. He has done it for 35 years. And so with great honor, love, and respect and homage, I bring my teacher, my trainer, the one and only Dr. Jim Marinakis, to the stage. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, Jody. Thank you. That was quite a lead-in right there. I hope I can live up to everyone's expectations. As you stated, I'm a naturopathic physician. It was my first doctoral degree, and I studied homeopathy as well, received a degree in 1982. I did work for the California State Board as an examiner for people, doctors, and people that were educated in Chinese medicine getting licensed as acupuncture physicians. And I've studied many things. I have more zest at 72 for the subject matter than I had at 17 when I started. I don't know how that works, but for some reason, I find it exhilarating. And I'm amazed at what has happened in the world. I mean, and when I started, the only vitamins people could get were one-a-day vitamins. You walk into a health food store today and you could be confused just by looking around, because there are so many options for people to obtain nutrients or vitamins. And I know that there's a long way to go. And most people, if you ask them what a vitamin was, they couldn't even tell you, but they take them. And it's not complicated. A vitamin is a vital mineral, a mineral that you can't live without. I think if people understood that, they'd take a lot more of them. because we need them for our natural immunity, for longevity, for intelligence, everything. And teaching people to do that has become my lifelong journey. I have come to find out there are 5 sources of energy that we all tap into to keep ourselves alive. And as far as I know, there is no primary education where people are taught how they do that, how they keep themselves alive. But it's fairly simple. They obtain energy from the world around them. And that adds to the innate energy that they're born with. And if you have a sufficient amount of energy or vitality, you can continue to live and flourish. If it starts to fall, you lose your natural immunity, you start to develop illnesses, diseases, and eventually you become incapable of functioning as a human being. And ultimately you perish. And unfortunately, 90% of the people that live manage a terminal disease for 20 to 30 years of their life before they expire.
How many years? 20 to
20 to 30 years of their life, they manage a terminal disease. That could be diabetes, could be cancer, could be arthritis. It's some degenerative condition that they get treated for through several decades, and then ultimately they expire from. Only a very small percentage of the population goes through the birth and death process, i.e. life, without suffering from disease. And it's not by design. We were designed to work perfectly. When we were created in the image and likeness of the Creator. The entire universe, all the universes, the cosmos was created and continues to be as it grows and expands by the Creator. And it created us to be self-regulating, self-repairing, and so forth. Why doesn't that happen? It doesn't happen because people, in their effort to understand the creation better, do things that interfere with the creation. We take things apart so that we can understand better how they work and reassemble them so that we're able to apply them in every way better. My prediction is in the next 5 years, human beings are going to go interstellar. I think that it's been predicted that in the next 5 years, people will evolve as much as they have in the last 300. 300 years ago, there was no United States. Most of the things that we're aware of, there were no cars, there were no flying machines. If we're going to transform as much in the next 5 years as we have in the last 300, we can only imagine and play with that idea as to what it really means and what the significance is. But from the perspective of being a healthcare practitioner, aficionado, teacher, that means that there will be no more disease, that people will only experience ill health or suffering if they opt into it. The knowledge, the necessary applications for people to become healthy and remain healthy and to flourish. And by this, I mean increasing their intelligence, extending their life, increasing their performance without spending more hours working at whatever they're doing, will become realized. These things are all on the same card. The same things that produce longevity, produce higher intelligence, produce increased performance, they also produce health. They're all dividends of exactly the same efforts that a person makes. And oddly enough, they only require us to adequately succeed at managing 5 energy sources that all of us do flawlessly. Everybody listening to this that's in the material world right now is doing that every day, and that's how they stay alive. They may not know, they might not even know what those 5 energy sources are, but they use them flawlessly. I'll give you an example. Nobody thinks, oh, I'm going to go and eat broccoli today, or I'm going to eat zucchini because I know that I need that for my pancreas or my brain or anything. They just go and eat the broccoli. They eat the zucchini. They eat the substance, whatever it is that they choose. And every bit of it is tuning their chemistry and all their essences, their vibrations so fine that they're able to live and breathe and think and sleep and do all of the things that they do without question. what's happening right now, which is something that I've been watching since my early days when there was just a tiny little vitamin called a one-a-day vitamin till today, is I've been watching people realize what those 5 energy sources are and how to use them in order to experience what it is that they want with their physical
Mm.
health and their capacities, physical and mental, as human beings. And it's not gelled yet to where people can go out to one institution and obtain everything they need to learn in order to flourish in every way. But it's very close. It's not very far away. It's going to happen within the next 5 years.
Wow.
I started out at the tutelage of a master in this world, who was an osteopathic physician named William J. Hulls. I met him in Arizona. I had been studying and applying nutrition myself for several years. As an athlete myself, I lacked a couple of years of experience in a very competitive sport, and I needed to find an edge. And I had experienced a decrease in my overall strength and fitness following the advice of my coach. And I went to the coach and told him, and he said, well, nobody else is complaining. And I said, I'm not complaining. I need to find out how to correct this.
And you were in high school,
And
I believe. You were in high school, correct? And a wrestler.
yes,
Yes.
I was wrestling. I was wanted to lose weight and improve my physique. I cut 30 pounds, but I got weaker doing what was advised by the coach, which was to take a one-a-day vitamin and drink a quart of orange juice with an egg in it. That's what I had every day. Lost the weight, but lost my stamina as well. So I went back to the drawing board. I went and got a telephone book. Many of you listening might not know what that is, but actually, before there were cell phones and computers,
Yes.
all of everyone's phone number was published in a book, and you'd go and look up the name or the company or the person, and there you'd find their number. So this was the resource that was available to me. I went to the phone book and I said, I need to learn more about healthy food. So I looked up, started reading everything listed under healthy, and there were health food stores. I never knew. But my intuition told me, look in this phone book. I did. And there happened to be 3 of them. At that time, I was in the metropolitan area of Phoenix. Phoenix was a health mecca in those days. This is in the 70s. And people would go there to improve their health. In fact, there was a television commercial, take your sinuses to Arizona. And
I remember.
there were huge retirement. Yeah. So oddly enough, in that population base of 2 million people at the time, one of the 3 health food stores that existed was within walking distance from my house. I walked up there, walked into the business establishment. It's a very small place, and it was dark. There was an elevated area where a woman who looked like she was 90, all white hair, she was reading at a desk underneath the lamp, reading a book. Didn't pay any attention to me as I walked in. I looked around. I didn't recognize anything at all. And she says, can I help you? And I said, well, I need to learn about healthy food. And she goes, have you ever read Bragg? I said, no, I might have done that once or twice, but I don't know what you're talking about. And she says, well, Paul Bragg.
Oh, that's great. Don't miss that joke. That went
So,
like this. It went past us.
so she said, he's a physiocultopath. She said, why don't you try his health food cookbook? It teaches you how to prepare the food. So I go over. There were about 6 different books available to anybody interested in health at that time. And there were several signatures of the 6 different books. There was Arnold Ehret, who taught people about mucusless diets, and there was Bragg's work. There may have been a Jack LaLanne book in there. There was a book by Norman Walker on colon health, death begins in the colon, and so forth. But there were very few books. So I got Bragg's book. I read it, memorized it, and applied what he said, which basically was whole foods prepared without frying or doing things that degrade the nutrition of food, and taking them in smaller amounts and exercising a lot. I was already exercising 3 or 4 hours a day. So I started eating whole foods. I fixed them myself. And bingo, I got stronger. I got a lot stronger. In fact, I was stronger than people that were 1 or 2 weight classes higher than me. If you're a wrestler or boxer, if you're in highly competitive sports, MMA, your class is determined by your body weight. And if there's more than a certain amount of difference in your body weight, it's too much of a competitive edge to the heavier person, and they don't compete them with each other. I became stronger than people that were 2 weight classes heavier than myself, and they could tell I got stronger, and so could I. And I remember the looks on their face, like when I would do something that would establish clearly that I had become stronger than them. They were like puzzled, like, how did you do that? And I knew the only thing I had changed was how I was feeding myself, my nutritional intake. And every year when wrestling season came around, I did this for 4 years. I would change my diet, and it worked. I was able to compete. What happened to me, though, is I became injured, and the lack of experience was part of it. And also, it wasn't my life path. I thought I would go after a gold medal in the Olympics, but I did ultimately make it to the Olympics, but not as an athlete, as a physician. But I had to overcome this obstacle, and I injured my knee. 3 years later, I met my first mentor, who was Dr. Hulls, and I'd gone to him for a pain I was having in my upper back that I had also got wrestling with a guy that was a lot bigger than me, and not in controlled competition, but Hulls treated me as an osteopath and solved the problem immediately. And I happened to ask him about my knee. He ran his hand down my leg, and he said, "Oh, you injured your medial meniscus," and he manipulated my knee. It was very incidental. He didn't even spend a few seconds doing it and walks out of the room. I had suffered for 3 years with that knee. It didn't bother me unless I stepped on a pebble or stepped off a curb, and then it would buckle and with a tremendous amount of pain. And anybody that's had a medial meniscus tear or injury, they know what I'm talking about. And if I tried to squat down, there was a huge amount of pressure in the knee. And they obviously recommended surgery, which I opted not to do. I had heard some horror stories about surgeries that went bad, and that can and does happen on a regular basis. And I figured as long as I could walk, even if I couldn't be a gold medalist in the Olympics, I was doing okay. And I turned my attention towards scholastic things. I didn't quit sports, but I changed my focus. 3 years later, I meet Hulls. He treats my knee, and it's never bothered me again since.
Decades. An incidental maneuver. Decades. Wow.
For over half a century, no more problem with the knee. And that triggered a curiosity in me that ultimately resulted in me studying with him for 3 years. I became his protege at the end of his life. And he passed at 80. I was literally drafted by the general public into private practice. I was still in my 20s, but
drafted like the NFL draft. You were drafted. Yeah. First round draft pick. Here's Dr. Jim going into practice. I love that.
People coming up and knocking on my door, "Are you the student of Dr. Hulls? I've traveled here from Ogden, Utah. I need you to see me." I mean, literally, they dragged me out of my home. It was interesting. It was a very different story of succession. But I went on, I got my degree in naturopathy. While I was studying naturopathy, a lot of the students in the postgraduate training I was in came to study with me. And I chartered a school in Arizona and started teaching people what I had learned from William J. Hulls and integrating what I had learned about nutrition and engineering other treatments to help people recover from various conditions and to restore their health. And I became well known by word of mouth sufficiently to bring people from all corners of the globe. People traveled to me from all over the world who had heard about me through others who had heard about me and my works. It wasn't a famous book. It wasn't a colorful advertisement. It wasn't a worldwide lecture series. It was literally the people left my office, and whatever they talked about to others, that's what brought them in.
Well, you know what they
And it
said.
was,
You know what they said, Doc, about John and Charles Wesley. People would come from miles around just to watch them burn. They had something. You had something. You had that healing touch, and you're going to tell everybody when that happens.
well, it's, I was able to transfer the science of what I was doing to others, and they became quite famous. My students still are. They treat as many people as they can in a day. And the body of information and the organization of people, which really was ignited in Arizona, is still growing and expanding. But things like that take a lot of education and time and dedication on behalf of the practitioners, far above and beyond what's required for an academic degree. And not many people are willing to do it. I was enthralled with the information, so I committed myself to it, and it became my life for many years, for really over a decade. I treated 35,000 people in private practice. I realized more and more doctors were coming and asking me to study with me, which I was familiar with. I was teaching people from the day I was a student. And I realized that in order for me to extend what I had realized about health and why people get sick and how they get well, which was my personal goal, I did not intend to be a physician. I wanted I wanted the science, the knowledge, and I was only able to obtain it through gaining the capacity to apply and implement the things, which are, as I stated, 5 sources of energy that we all use to keep ourselves alive every day. We just don't know necessarily what they are as such. And we don't know how we do it. It's done automatically. It's what's programmed into our soul. Our memory, our biological computer is what keeps us alive.
Mm.
Like I said, we don't think about, do I need to take a walk today? We just decide, gee, I think I'm going to go take a walk. And we wind up walking around a lake or going chasing a bird that's flying around in the bushes or something. And in those moments, it's crucial. Or we go and enroll in a class and we learn how to do yoga or something that sustains us. And it's this cooperation between the different parts of ourself, our spirit and our soul, or biological computer, if you will, that keeps us going. But at the same time, over the past 50 years, I've seen that people, the general public, is gaining the knowledge of what they need to know to understand this process of how they stay alive. And once you do that, you realize how the mechanism, our physical anatomy, how it works, and the relationship between that and our emotions, our soul, if you will, and our psyche. And once you understand, we're not talking about many things. We're talking about 3 parts and the subdivisions within us. This is very
Divisions, that's good.
And we are moving towards comprehending that in its entirety. It's not going to be very long before it becomes common knowledge in what people share amongst themselves, patients and people that are in the science, the applied sciences, the professions, if you will. And once it becomes general knowledge, there won't be much need for services. Yes, people will still use surgery when they fall off of a building or get hit by a car, but their ability to avoid those things will be increased. We will enter into a period of time where man is free from suffering to a large degree. But there are certain key things that are necessary for this to happen. Some of them are already in place. I've been explaining to people from the time I was a student. One of the things I learned from Holmes, he had ended a parasite epidemic in the United States, which had raged on for over 100 years. He was hired out of school as his first doctoral degree. He was hired by the US government to do parasitology research. And he was part of a two-man team that had been studying an epidemic in the United States for over 100 years. Every year they would hire a new person. And the two-man team, one always had a year experience before the new one came on.
Sure. Tag team.
Sure. Three months into his first year as a parasitologist, he turned to his partner and he said, "Hey, I know why we're not getting rid of these parasites." This was over lunch. And his co-researcher says to him, "You do?" And he goes, "Yeah." He says, "Well, don't tell the boss, we'll get fired."
We'll be out of a job. Oh my goodness gracious.
He lost his job. He told them, and it was very simple. He had common sense, or maybe uncommon sense, in the context of what is and isn't acceptable as common sense. He realized that the parasites would lay eggs, and that the medicine that killed the parasites didn't destroy the eggs. So the eggs would hatch in 14 days, and then they'd get the parasites all over again. So he developed a method of overlapping the life cycle of the parasite, killing off the juveniles before they could lay eggs, was the end of the epidemic. That was one of the first things he accomplished as a physician. He went on to become a legendary, while he was alive, he was legendary. He did many, many, many things. The reality of parasites is something that people are just now beginning to realize. And I'll explain it to you in an encapsulated way. There have been doctors that have spent their entire lifetime educating people about the need to eliminate parasites. And sometimes without understanding the subject over bigger periods of time than a lifetime, it's hard to get a view of what is needed. During the Renaissance period of man's history, after which 70% of the European population died from a plague, a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
It killed 70% of the population. We learned this in history. The people that were left formed what we call the Renaissance period. This was after the feudal period or the Dark Ages. And there was a custom that those people had. That was the time of the invention of the cocktail. And if any of you are mixologists, you know that a cocktail is made of vermouth and gin. And vermouth, vermin are parasites. Vermouth was traditionally made with the flower of wormwood, which is a natural substance that kills parasites.
There we go.
Those people during the Renaissance, the upper class drank vermouth, the commoners drank absinthe, which is made from the leaves of the plant. Either way, they killed off their parasites every day. That's where cocktail hour came from. And
True happy hour, wasn't it? I mean, the parasites are gone and I'm happy. Yeah.
Exactly. They understood somehow collectively as an entire population of people, countries, they got together and they celebrated getting rid of these bugs inside of them. Truth is, there are over 300 different parasites that infest people. 90 of them are common. And until recently, nobody's doing anything about it with a small handful of people like myself. Everybody that I know, I take something to get rid of parasites constantly. At first, I would tell them to do it every year. Then I would tell them every 6 months. And then when I realized how significant the problem had become, because man has bred them into unprecedented heights. People that own horses, they make sure their horses get wormed. They won't go more than a certain period of time because parasites will cause illness in anything. And with horses, they develop what's called colic is the first thing. And that's the number one condition horses are treated for. And it's the number one cause of death with horses.
And what was that again? It was what?
They call it colic.
Colic. And like a baby has colic.
Yeah.
A baby has colic. It's a different kind, but I wanted to make sure our listeners got that because that's quite a few comments here.
I want to ask you, is it different? Is it really different?
It's probably not.
No. People are born with parasites. They get them in the blood from their mother. If you don't kill them off and get rid of them, you give them to your baby. And Nobody even likes talking about this, but autopsies reveal that most people have parasites, like about 98% of the population. They're they're so prevalent now. Their their larvae are in the dust in the air that we breathe. They're in the water, and if you eat organic food, you have more parasite eggs than you do if you eat inorganic food.
And this is not a disclaimer to eat a McDonald's or a Whopper. Okay, just so that you have fewer parasites. No.
But they're in everything. And if you have a pet, pets have them. If you own a dog in Florida and you don't worm it every month, you don't give it ivermectin, it will die from heartworm. It won't live very long. And this, everyone knows this. And the vets tell them, and they go, and I'm scratching my head. I said, well, do they think that the pets have them? The dogs have, the horses have them, but they don't have them. Somehow, miraculously, we escape having them ourselves. Well,
Exactly.
the thing is, we do have them, unless we do something to get rid of them every day. Now, how significant is it? Where do viruses come from? Go and check. You'll see. Do Wikipedia, talk to virologists. They don't know where they come from. I know where they come from because I asked and I received. I knocked on the door. And it's very clear parasites and things that cause us to decay or break down. As our cell breaks apart, the parts of the cell become smaller particles, which means a strand of RNA or DNA breaks down into a series of genes. It's not an entire strand of a chromosome anymore. And when it's in that state, it's biologically viable. There are receptor sites on your cells where a piece of ribonucleic acid, RNA, can enter into your cell and attach itself to your RNA and order your DNA to make another cell. And the cell that it makes now contains your genetic code and the code of the virus. That's a viral infection. And in most people, 88 to 90% of the population, your body finds the virus and destroys it. Virus is not a living thing. It doesn't metabolize anything. It's a piece of somebody else's cell.
It's just it's not living. And look at the havoc because we didn't give it the respect that we had needed to from the beginning.
Parasites are largely the reason why we're susceptible and the reason why they exist. I theorize this. It became proven by masses, by billions of people recently during the pandemic. And the way that happened, and I will discuss this with anybody who thinks it's otherwise. I know ivermectin, which is a dewormer, was disapproved of by the American medical establishment. Not all of them, but largely by the convention. And I think doctors that recommended ivermectin may have even had problems in the United States. But in India, which had the most serious problem during the pandemic, whereby hundreds of thousands of people were getting sick every day, dying, it was happening so fast that it made headline news for about 2 weeks worldwide. We were watching it here from the United States, and it was scary how fast these people were dying and becoming infected. The Indian government issued a package to every single person in India. There were 5 doses of medicine. 2 of those were 2 doses of ivermectin. It ended the pandemic in India.
There you go.
Were people still getting viral infections? Of course. They didn't double dose them. They got their parasite, but for a short period of time, their physical corporal body was relieved of the burden of the parasites. That was sufficient to enable their body to then overcome the virus and restore their health. Enough to end the pandemic. So in science, this is a proven. Wormer was given to billions of people. over 1.5 billion people, and it ended the serious pandemic they were having. Now, if you use everything that I've explained in here, sure, those parasites were not gone for good, and they're going to grow back, and they still have to be dealt with. But for a short period of time, just getting rid of the parasites with the dewormer enabled the people to recuperate.
To revive and to live. And I mean, to unpack this, I just want to tell our audience, as you're seeing this across, of course, you know that it's drjody.com, but the vitalessence.com, as we've jumped into the talking about the pandemic. And you can only imagine, ladies and gentlemen, how he actually was led to Florida. And so I'm so grateful. I want to fast forward to the time that we have left, because you have done something remarkable, whether it was studying with Dr. Hulls, whether it's going to and memorizing the Bragg cookbook as a young man. You've always done extraordinary, period, end of story. You've done extraordinary in my life and what I've learned and the knowledge base that I've gotten. But what you've done, if you go to vitalessence.com, ladies and gentlemen, what is there? Please share with our viewers, and we may not get to number 3, 4, and 5. I know we know the broccoli. I know we know the yoga. Please go into what they can find at vitalessence.com, please.
I actually encountered the pandemic in fall of 2019. I was at a business meeting in the country of Aruba with the government and a company that I sit on the advisory board for that provides liquid natural gas to produce electricity on a national scale. And I had set up an introduction with the government of Aruba. I had 2 representatives that were working there. One of them is a 73, now 74 or 5-year-old gentleman, a 35-year-old gentleman who was an engineer who was originally from Aruba, resided in Costa Rica at the time. He was getting his graduate degree. I think he was getting a master's degree in engineering. And a businessman that owned and ran the company, the LNG company. His name was Swapan Kataria. That LNG Source was the name of the company. And he had been in Wuhan for 2 weeks doing business in China. Now, at this time, nobody heard about coronavirus unless they were virologists. Nobody heard about Wuhan. Nobody heard about pandemic. Nada, nothing anywhere on any news service. It was not in the news. We had our meetings. We left. Immediately, within a few days, I was not able to get in touch with Swapan Kataria. I contacted his London office. Oddly enough, they hadn't heard from him, but it wasn't uncommon for him to be incommunicado for a few days, especially if he was off in a remote area examining a pipeline that was being put in or something where there was no service, no towers and nothing like that. And I talked to the 2 people, one residing in Aruba and the other one in Costa Rica. And the 35-year-old in Costa Rica, I couldn't get a hold of the guy in Aruba. The 35-year-old in Costa Rica, I get him on the phone and he sounds very congested. And he says, "Oh, I've been sick." He says, "I don't know what's wrong with me." He says, "I don't know if it's a flu or something." He said, "I've been sicker than I've ever been in my life, but don't worry about me. I'm getting better." I said, his name was Juan Pablo. I said, "Okay, that's good to hear. How's it going with Jose? Has he been in contact with the government?" He said, "Actually, Jose was in the hospital. He's being treated for double pneumonia." And I said, "Oh, how bad?" I said, that's terrible. He says, "You might want to call him. I'm sure he'd like to hear from you." And this is a guy that was telling me at 73 years old, he was telling me, "Look, I can't run as fast as I could when I was in my 20s, but I can do everything else." He's very proud of how vital he was. Vital. Yeah. So, there's these 4 guys, in a tropical paradise, spending 5 days going to dinner and enjoying everything there. We had a good time, bonded, got to know each other much better. So I call him up and he says, he's telling me how sick he is. And he says, I don't know. He says, they're treating me for double pneumonia, but he says, I get sicker every night. He says, I sweat. And he says, my body aches and I get these pains in my head. He says, he said, I this might be the end for me. He had sadly to tell me that he thought he could die. He felt like he was going to die.
So he went from, I could do everything that I've ever done in my life except run.
Yeah,
like I did in my 20s. And now he says, I'm going to die.
right.
Wow.
I'm telling you, he was telling me that, not even wanting to speak the words. And I said to him, I said, Jose, now I've been out of private practice and just teaching other physicians and setting up education for treatment systems and whatnot for a long time. I said, but it doesn't sound like a bacterial infection. It sounds more like you have a viral infection. I said, would you mind taking a medicine if I gave it to you that is for viral infections? And he said, no, I'll be happy to take it. He says, this antibiotics are not working. So I gave him what you know as V-Guard, which is not available to the general public yet, but it's available on a testing basis to a handful of people. And it will be available within 30 to 60 days. And in given instances, people can get it through their physician calls us, or if they call and they have a need for it, they can obtain it. So
For their holistic nutritionist or, yeah.
Right. So it's not that it can't be obtained at all, but it has to be obtained through channels until the Food and Drug Administration authorizes us to say something about it. They're not going to say it's a treatment for coronavirus or anything else. They'll wind up saying something like, this has been proven in laboratory studies to improve your natural immunity. In order for them to say it was a medicine for coronavirus, we'd have to go through a new drug application, and people won't see a drop of this stuff for 12, 14, 15 years. So we're going through and getting it approved as a nutrient, and people will spread the word. They're just like they are already. Actually, the doctors that got it to test it are buying more and more of it and giving it to their family and friends and introducing it to other physicians. It's starting to spread around the world on its own. This guy takes it, and I call him the next day, and he's not there. And I thought, oh, gee, he must have had to go to the hospital. And it's too bad. So I get a hold of Juan Pablo in Costa Rica, and he says, oh, no. He said, actually, Jose is all right. He went back to work. I said, what? He was supposed to call me.
What?
Yeah. The next day, he's back to work. And he says, he's going to call you tomorrow. The next day, he calls me. He says, he said, I was just so far behind because when I was sick, I just needed to get some things done. So he says, I was at the government office. And I thought, this guy went from telling me he was going to die to now he's fine. He feels fantastic. But remember, nobody knew anything about coronavirus. I recognized it from 10 years of private practice, what it was, that it was a viral infection. And I had this medicine. I had learned about it principally from Dr. Halls in 2003. The Canadian government.
His legacy lives on.
Yeah.
His legacy lives on. Wow.
In 2003, Dr. Magda, who was not a doctor at the time, she was a government executive, contacted me to ask me to help them with a SARS outbreak that they had. And I started to work with them, but it was short-lived and it never impacted the United States. So I shelved what I was doing. I came back to the United States, and everyone knows later on in the year, I think it was in December, January, we started to hear about this shocking news of this virus from China that was infecting people. And as it started to spread, we were being warned about it and told that we're going to institute a program of wearing masks to stop it from spreading here. And it slowly went through Europe and eventually made its way to our shores. And one of the very first people that developed an infection was a woman that worked helping campaigns for politicians for many years. And she was at a meeting with President Trump and the president of Brazil in Mar-a-Lago, Florida. And the president of Brazil was known to have developed COVID, but she was at meetings with them before when they were just finding out about this, and she developed COVID. And her name's Margie. She called me up and says, Dr. Jim, she says, I know you don't take patients anymore, but she says, I know you know things, alternatives. I'm going to my doctor and they're treating me, but the doctor doesn't even think I have an infection. She just gave me the antibiotics because she doesn't know what else to do. She says, do you think there's any way that I could have that disease that we're hearing about in the news? And I said, well, Margie, I said, I don't know. I said, I am not familiar with it. I said, Did you take a test? She said, I did, but it takes 2 weeks to get the results back. At that time, that's how long it took to find out if you had COVID. This was right in the very beginning of the pandemic. She's one of the first persons to develop disease in the United States. But I saw similarities between her and the guy in Aruba.
In Aruba.
And I said, I'm kind of curious what the test results are. And I said, would you let me know when you get them? She said, yes, but what can I do now? I said, well, I have something I'm going to give you. It's a medicine for viral infections. I have no idea if it's going to work or not, but it won't hurt you. It's made of all herbs and it's a natural substance. I've been using it in my private practice and teaching it to other doctors for decades. So she takes it and she calls me up. She says, I don't know if it's mental, but she said, I would say I'm 70 to 80% there. And she said, what should I do? And I said, well, Margie, you don't need to do anything based on my experience with it. Unless you start to get symptomatic again, your symptoms get worse, just ride it, see what happens. And she calls me the next day. This was the second day after she had taken the V-Guard. And she says, she said, I'm 99% there. She says, I'm feeling fine. And I said, okay, just stay in touch with me. So 10 days later, she gets her test back and she calls me back and she says, I'm shocked. She says, I have that disease. And by then, people were falling in the streets. We've seen newsreels with people on gurneys in New York City and the hospitals were filling up and everything. And she said, I had that disease. Your medicine worked. It got rid of that. So I then started on a course of how to get this to the general public.
Of course.
It's not easy. Normally, there was a special program put together to fast track medicines or anything that would help, but there's a lot of politics in medicine. Companies try to block new things from coming on the market. It's a gauntlet. And I had never gotten a medicine approved. In my private practice, I was allowed to distribute things to people. I learned in all 3 of my degrees, you have to know how to make medicine to get your degree in those subjects. You have to know how to make your own medicine. I'm not talking about in personal pharmacy.
Out of the herbs of the earth or whatever, and
all sorts of things. But you have to know how to make medicines, determine what a person needs, make them and give it to them, or anything else you're going to do with it. So I went on an educational process. I hired people. And ultimately what I was able to determine is that most of the products being sold today in the health food industry, they're being sold under a gray area where they're trying to say that it's good for you, but they're not supposed to say that it's good for you. It's not legal according to the FTC or the FDA to say that something does anything for you at all. I don't even know why a person should take them, but they do. And I knew that I would be called on a much stricter status quo. So I found a provision where you can prove that a substance has what are called structural or functional claims. And that means that it changes some body function or restores some structure like your heart or lungs or whatever.
Sure.
And we did our preliminary testing and it showed that V-Guard did 2 things that were startling. Number 1, it raises your natural immunity. The scientists that discovered this, examining it, tested people, and you helped with this, Jody, you know about it.
Yes.
People would get their blood tested. They would take the V-Guard. They would go back again within 24 hours and get their blood tested. And 100% of the people that did that had increased white blood cell production in their blood. And for those of you that don't necessarily know what that means, the white blood cells are the ones that, they're not the only thing, but they're the major thing that finds a foreign substance in your body and destroys it and gets rid of it so that it doesn't cause you illness. They even find cancer cells. There are T cells, they're adapted white blood cells that cause your body to develop antibodies, which immunize you to pathogens, disease-causing elements. So we've proven that it does both increases the antibody production and increases the white blood cell count. And we are currently in the process of, we have to have a third-party laboratory that is documenting this. and it's being presented to the Food and Drug Administration, and we're applying for registration. It's an informal registration. They don't even acknowledge it. But if they don't challenge you within 6 months, then it's considered accepted. It's a very different process than what is used for drugs and approved medications that are classified as drugs. So it is a very safe thing. It's been given to children, been given to adults. You can't give it to people under 3 months old because they don't metabolize alcohol. These are alcohol extracts of common, well, not so common herbs, but herbs from around the world that are readily available. And there's a formula that causes it to work. The entourage effect is very active. And for those of you that don't know what that is, I'm not going to take the time to explain it, but you can look it up on any kind of a Google search. And if I come back later, I'd be happy to.
Well, the deal is this. I don't know how this happened. It happens with you all the time. How did an hour go by? How did an hour go by? I said, the network, they're not going to get their second commercial break. This was too good. Will you please come back? So we had part 2 of sources. We only got to broccoli and yoga. We need to get to the active source of VGuard and 3, 4, and 5. Can we do this, please?
I promise I'll come back.
Okay, because what you are the epitome of what we've learned about the science of getting rich. There's a thinking self, which all things are made, and it permeates and penetrates the universe. You are that universe. This universe now has seen the essence, the vital essence of Dr. Jim Marinakis. I can't even begin to thank you with such gratitude that, I'm around you all the time. I talk to you subsequent times a week. I was writing notes. It never ceases. You are the disciple. You were the prodigy of Dr. Halls. I'm so grateful that you're keeping that going with other prodigies, because what you have taken this is to the next level. Your last piece of wisdom, and then I'll round it up with a commercial break and say we've had an amazing show. I knew it was going to be epic. Final words.
I've had many great teachers. I've had teachers from China and Korea and other places that have come here and tutored me. And I've learned many things. I found that I had a wealth of knowledge inside of me as well. You are an extraordinary person yourself, or I wouldn't be here doing this interview with you. I've turned down many others, but your sincerity, which the people that watch your shows, I'm sure have seen, your earnestness, your intelligence, and everything about you warrants support from anybody that has something to give. And if I do, I'm happy to give it for you and for those people that you address through your program. So I will come back.
Please do. I'm telling you, you epitomize that quote that I said, when you take care of you and your world first, the world is empowered forever. Dr. Jim, you've empowered this audience. The chat in Facebook has blown up. Usually I read comments. No, I couldn't do it. But that's that trickle out effect, that precision, the Buckminster Fuller talk, that precision like gravity. You do it the right way, things will go out. You are everything. And we'll come back with 3, 4, and 5 probably next month. Much honor and esteem. And let's hear from our co-sponsor, Confidence Tones. Bye for now, Jim.
Bye now.
Welcome to Confidence Tones, where we use a proprietary audio development formula called audio immersion to provide an experience that's designed to help quickly and effortlessly generate positive change in the subconscious mind when used correctly. This experience is achieved using 4 primary building blocks: brainwave modulation, invocation of positive emotions, immersive imagination stimuli, and developmental suggestion. We know of no other source in the world that provides the synergistic combination. With a good pair of headphones, you'll be able to immerse yourself into audio that's designed specifically to help you feel better, do better, and live better.
One of those programs that I totally endorse. You can go to drjod.com/confidence tones and look it up, because that confidence, that is what is inside you. can change the world, just like Dr. Jim was talking. I knew it would be epic. I didn't know it was going to be that good. So I'm going to say, stay tuned. Next month, we will book Dr. Jim again, because we have to find out about what's 3, 4, and 5 now, don't we? The 5 sources. But eat your broccoli, do your yoga, find that exercise that speaks to you, but find the thing that speaks to you through your absolute vital essence, through your health for life. Certainly reach out to me, drjod.com. I will tell you, the giveme5.eventbrite.com. Now we're in day 2. We have 3, 4, and 5. You see that number 5 sources. Give me 5. Give us these 5 things that mean so much in your life. We've done 5 goals and intentions. We've done 5 fitnesses. Now we're going to 5 vitamins, 5 energies, and 5 habits. But after that, this group, this conjoined bear tribe, is going to go through our parasite cleanse. We're going to do with this. Oh, we're in this kind of season, whatever. Didn't you get what Dr. Jim said about the parasites? We're doing the parasite cleanse starting on the 23rd of January. Stay tuned. Reach out to me on all social media at Health Coach Jody or at Dr. Jody. My email is Jody, my name, Jodee, at healthcoachjody.com. Reach out to me and send me an email on drjody.com. I will get you plugged in to this parasite cleanse. I'll get you plugged in where you want to go, because that was enough to think of what is true vitality. That's true vitality. And this program has been taught to me from Dr. Jim. That's the one that we're going to do, because I am one of his students. I am one of his disciples. I am one that sits and listens to him and his wisdom, just like I did today. This is one you're going to want to listen to again. So reach out to me, drjody.com. Let's just get cleansed the right way. Let's get really clean, pristine clean, and stay tuned for more in 2023. For those of you who are listening and think, she's really doing a doubleheader, gotta do it. I've been involved now with the Global Vision Conference with Johnny Reagan and Blanca Perper down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with my wonderful mentor, speaker extraordinaire, Les Brown will be there. And we're doing it for the children. We're doing it for the children on the 21st of January. They're going to be my guests. We're bumping it back an hour. 7 p.m. I'll be back here on Traverse TV, and you're going to hear about the Global Vision Conference. But truly, when you have your health, you have everything. Dr. Jim epitomized that. Life is like a milkshake. You choose your ingredients wisely. He chose those. And when he did, his life has been oh so sweet. I hope your life has been sweeter for hearing the wisdom of Dr. Jim Marinakis. You've got to love it when there's 4 syllables in that last name. You listen. And stay tuned in 2023 here on Traverse TV. We have programs, we have absolute things that will just be things that you will need, simple, effective, and systematic. Here, a better you, better me in 2023 with Traverse TV and Dr. Joe D. So until then, we're going to say, until tonight, this is real easy. We're just going to say ciao for now until dinner time. Ciao for now.